What we've been really trying to emphasize in these congressional meetings is this is not a technology that can be strategically built and then strategically deployed for the United States to gain an advantage over other countries. This is a doomsday device, and it is going to blow up in our faces regardless of who builds it first, unless we know how to control it.
Welcome to For Humanity, an AI Risk Podcast, episode number 56, AGI Goes to Washington. I'm John Sherman. Thank you so much for joining me. I spent 2 full days in D.C. last week lobbying congressional and Senate staffers for AI risk regulation along with Pause AI. It was an incredible experience. It was truly encouraging. We're going to talk all about that this week and how you can help build off of what we did down there wherever you are. I am just a dad in Baltimore who believes the big frontier AI labs like OpenAI when they tell us their technology has the future potential to end all life on Earth, that they don't know how to control it, that they don't understand how it works, and that they spend all their time and money making their technology stronger, not safer. For Humanity is the AI Risk Podcast for the general public, no tech background required. This show is solely about the threat of human extinction from artificial intelligence. I need you to hit like, share, subscribe. If you haven't, leave a comment, and there are links in the show notes for monthly donation subscriptions. If you believe in what I'm doing on this podcast, it would mean a great deal if you'd help me spread the word. Those monthly donations are as low as $1 a month. Please go on there and sign up today. Let me know that I have your support. It would mean a great deal to me. So, last week I spent 2 full days in Washington, D.C., my hometown, lobbying staffers of congressional and Senate offices with Felix, Simone, and Berman of Pause AI. I grew up in D.C. My dad was a congressional staffer and a federal agency employee for all 45 years of his career. My sister was a congressional chief of staff for more than 20 years. I grew up in and around D.C. politics, but much like I have never actually been to the top of the Washington Monument, I have never actually been into a congressional or Senate office and lobbied before last week. It was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. Politics can be abstract, right? It's like numbers and ideas and acronyms. But this was a very human experience. Lobbying, I have learned, is sales. And selling AI risk is unlike selling anything else. I did door-to-door sales as a teenager. I did phone sales in college. I've been running an entrepreneurial video agency for 16 years. I know sales. This was different. Telling someone you think we're all going to die soon, and here's why, and but here's what you can do about it, is not an easy sale by any means. But we did it, and I think it went really well. So our guests this week are Berman and Felix Simone of Pause AI as we unpack our trip to Capitol Hill. Awesome. All right. Welcome, guys. Louis and Felix, works. Here we are. Here we go.
You're up to
great
the side,
to have
John,
you guys.
quite a bit.
Yes. There we go. Straighten myself out. There we go. Louis, you are one of a very few. You are the third returning guest to this program. So
third, I'm so excited for me, and I apologize.
Yeah, Roman and Liron, and now you. So you're in the For Humanity Hall of Fame. Felix, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Great to be here, John. Thank you.
Absolutely. So all right. So I've set it up a little bit in the intro about we went to DC, but why don't we do a little intros? Felix, you're new to the program, so why don't you just introduce yourself to the viewers real quick?
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you again for having me. So my name's Felix Simone. I'm the organizing director of Pause AI US here in Washington, D.C. I'm lucky enough to be able to work on this full time. Got my start in AI policy about a year ago when, after kind of the latest model of ChatGPT came out, I realized that this was no longer a hypothetical risk. It was a real and urgent risk. I spent a long time kind of learning, reading, as much as possible about the subject, realized how few people were working on this, and decided to change my career as quickly as I could. And now I'm fortunate enough to be able to meet with U.S. congressional offices, inform these offices about AI risk, advocate for a pause, and then I also help to manage Pause AI US's growing volunteer network and our programming. So we have kind of active chapters in about a half dozen US cities. We want to expand that out, grow a lot over the next coming months, and really turn this into a nationwide movement that can no longer be ignored. So that's why I'm here, and looking forward to chatting more about that.
Awesome. Love it, Felix. So glad to have you in DC doing what you're doing, and have you here as well. Louis, give us a little introduction of what you've been doing, and maybe talk about your book just for a little second, if you will, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Louis Berman. I think you introduced me as an AI CTO in the last thing, and I am the CTO for a small startup now, but the last job I had prior to that was I was a chief technologist for one of the largest technology firms in the world, EPAM. And I don't like to think of myself as either one of those. I like to think of myself as a coder. So I've had an entire career of coding. You know, the main reason I started my startup, Squid Eyes, by the way, was to get back to coding. You know, I retired for approximately 2.5 months, and it drove me nuts. That's why we started a company. So I've been concerned about AI for as long as I can remember. I wrote a book about it. Show up.
There it is.
I can't tell if that's the correct way around, but we'll talk about catastrophe in a bit. But the idea is, like, I've had all these thoughts floating around in my head about it, and I was immensely pleased. This is about 1.5 years ago, maybe. Same time that John sort of came across Eliezer Yudkowsky's article in Time. Somewhere around there, I came across Pause AI, and I realized that instead of just belly aching about AI, I had a focus to sort of work on it. And I'm internally grateful that you guys and the larger organization exist. And so the thing that I bring to the table is I've actually coded AI, mostly genetic programming, so not mostly the current round of large language models. And indeed, today, I'm partner in a trading company, so I was working on genetic models this morning. But I realized this stuff is likely to turn out bad, more likely to turn out bad than well, and that I should be part of the solution and do something about it. So I wrote a book. It's about 350-page book called Catastrophe, which is takes on the whole idea from a very different angle. Prior books were more about, facts, let's call it. How you think it's going to happen or stuff. I just take it as a given that this is going to turn out to be bad. I talk about it very little, but mostly I talk about it's going to turn out bad. And then the idea is, well, that's probably true. That's overwhelmingly true, but I'm not the sort of person to just sit down and take it like a veal. So I become a volunteer at Pause AI. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is one of the most important activities I think that we can have, which is lobbying Congress to do something.
Yes.
And there's a lot they can do. There's a lot they can do. And, it turns out, even though we're up against incredible moneyed interests, the OpenAIs and the Anthropics and what have you, Googles of this world, who can throw literally billions of dollars at this problem, what we have is just passion. So that's what we're here to talk to you about today.
Awesome. And real quick about the book. So the book will be available in the coming weeks.
January 2nd, 3rd.
January 2nd, 3rd. And I will just say this.
Look on xriskbooks.com, xriskbooks.com. The website's mostly finished now. And, cool. Actually, I tried to publish it last Friday, and Amazon had a technical problem with the size of the spine of the book. But it should be out by the beginning of the year.
Okay. And so the book has chapters written by different people. Felix wrote one, I wrote one, and I just want to say this to the viewers of this show as a means to maybe get some books sold, Louis. I wrote an essay for Louis's book that has thoughts about what the end would be like that I have never expressed anywhere other than in that book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to. So if you want to know what that looks like, get Louis's book, and maybe we'll talk about it here sometime. Maybe we won't.
Yeah, absolutely. But very importantly, this is a thing about community. One of the big things we do, and maybe I'll even read from the book a little later, this is about permission, right? We're talking about a scary thing. the contention of Pause AI, the contention of Louis Berman, I think the contention of Felix and John is that left to its own devices, AI by default will turn out terrible. And in all likelihood, no, full stop, kill you, kill your children, kill the gardenias, kill everybody. And in short order, we're talking years, we're not talking decades. And the things that can stop it, of course, have to be pretty extraordinary, turns out. The default switch does not go safe. It goes unsafe. So we want to give you permission to consider things like that, and hopefully it'll change the conversation.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the title of this show is going to be AGI Goes to Washington, but before we get to our visit to Washington, I want to talk about a couple of things. One is something that we talked with when on our trip to DC, but it happened just in the week preceding our trip, and that is this Apollo research report that has everybody's hair on fire. Louis, if maybe you could just talk about it briefly, just what it is from sort of a technical aspect, what happened, what it means, and then, Felix, give your thoughts on it, and let's just talk about that briefly.
I want to step back just to a little bit. If you look at the AI companies, OpenAI, Claude, Google, whatever, it'd be fair to say that they have a lot of moneyed interests working to develop features and capabilities. And thousands. John is fond of saying that it's about 2,000 people employed at these firms who are putting our lives at risk, which is probably a pretty accurate number. So Apollo Research is just a small research group, a think tank, if you will, that looks at the current situation. And, so if you think about it, there's really only two types of think tanks, or maybe two and a half. The first are inside, right? They have access to whatever the cutting edge sort of things that you and I cannot play with. And Apollo may have those capabilities, but they don't have them in spades. What they did was they looked at the edge models, but not the real deep frontier models. That is ChatGPT 01.
The current models, the models people are using.
Yeah. I think it'd be better to say on the very edge, the release in the last month or so. And so what happened? It's a pretty simple story. They routinely found deception. They found attempts to exfiltrate. That is code trying to move itself to presumably more permissive machines. They found doubling down on deception, saying a lie, being confronted with a lie, and then trying to lie further around this. And the technical reason why this is even possible, I mean, in a research understanding sense, is by instructing these machines to do things, these researchers are also instructing them to create logs of their activities, their inner state, what have you. So that's not the complete view. If you work for OpenAI and you were part of this conversation, you'd have internal logs, perhaps, that would tell you very, very detailed information about what is happening in place. These are logs that were literally, it said, hey, do something, tell me what your thought process was, and then give me the response for it. And, if you were a super twisty mustache villain, you would not hide these logs. But there's an odd situation with AI right now in that it is doing these nefarious things, or things we could call nefarious, but it's not completely aware that it's doing it, in a sense. We're not talking about AI that is at human and above level just yet. It's approaching it. So
right.
So we could look, and it was called introspecting on what is happening. So it wasn't hidden. They're hiding stuff from us. We literally saw their state. It says lie about this, or words.
Right. And so like the sort of takeaway headline that we were able to walk into these congressional offices was this stuff that has been theoretical for a long time about they could be deceptive, they could be scheming, they could be lying, they could self-replicate. It went ahead and did all these things the week before. The report came out the week before that this is not a hypothetical. They are scheming, they are lying, they are exfiltrating, they are replicating. So Felix, what was that like to be able to walk that into this talk that you've been giving for some time, to be like, actually, it's happening?
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of what I wanted to go off of what you were saying, Lewis. You know, the AI safety community has been warning us about these risks for years, in some cases 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, right? For the longest time, it's been hypothetical, right? It's been hypothetical, easy to dismiss because the models were so weak and so inflexible and so incapable. Um, but you can find people going back probably as far as perhaps 2010, talking about, well, you're trying to program a system that has goal-seeking behavior. Actually, program isn't even the right word, right? That implies conventional programming. You're trying to train a system that you don't fully understand that has goal-seeking behavior, right? And that goal-seeking behavior can lead to power-seeking behavior, right? Because the system will attempt to seek power in order to better attain the goals that it has. And then that power seeking behavior can lead to lying if the system comes to believe that human beings will seek to disrupt its behavior. It can also even lead to active attempts to overcome human beings, to prevent itself from being shut down, to copy itself onto other servers, copy its weights onto other servers, as Lewis was saying, right? And to exfiltrate itself, to become unstoppable, to become more powerful, to become better at achieving the initial goals that it's been set, right? So, people like Nick Bostrom in his 2014 book, so that's a decade ago now, Superintelligence, were warning about this. They were saying, we don't know how to reliably control smarter than human AIs. We believe that these AI systems will have power-seeking behaviors and may actively try to wrest power from the human race. And we don't have a good game plan to stop this, right? That was 10 years ago. From 2014 to 2024, this was a hypothetical concern, right? It was an imagined concern of a couple of, I would say, mostly academics who were worried about this. And in 2024, it's no longer a hypothetical concern. We now have the early warning signs of power-seeking behavior in AI models. And so what we're worried about, I would say all three of us, and hopefully many of the people watching, is that these same tendencies, they might be harmless now, right? Because we're smarter than the models that we are currently creating. But if you have the same behavioral tendencies in a system that is smarter than we are, and that is actively trying to seek and wrest power away from us, that is not a world where things go well.
Yeah.
So what we've been really trying to emphasize in these congressional meetings is that kind of scenario, right? So there is still a kind of default sense throughout much of Congress and really much of society of AI as being a tool, right? It's a useful tool. It can write papers for us. It can help us code things. It can drive Waymo cars to some extent in limited locales, right? The whole point that we are trying to make is that when you're talking about uncontrollable, power-seeking human AI, that is no longer a tool, right? You're talking about something that will not be controllable, right? So
Yeah.
so in these congressional meetings, and we can talk a little bit more about why this matters, and what the current congressional landscape looks like. Happy to talk about this later, but in a nutshell, we're really trying to emphasize that, this is not a technology that can be strategically built and then strategically deployed for the United States to gain an advantage over other countries. This is a doomsday device, and it is going to
Yeah.
blow up in our faces regardless of who builds it first, unless we know how to control it.
Absolutely. And so just sort of like top line, this thing was like, oh, people are like, well, we'll just turn it off. No, you won't just turn it off. It'll know you're going to turn it off, and it'll copy itself to another server, or it'll do something else to make you not be able to turn it off. Like this is real. All the sort of like visions of like, well, we'll just be able to do this, or like, why would it want to do something bad? It doesn't want to do something bad. It's just doing something that's in its chain of things that it's doing. It doesn't even know that it's bad.
Right. Well, so an analogy that I sometimes have heard is that, imagine that you're a human. Well, you don't need to imagine that you're a human being. You're a human being. Um, imagine that you're a construction worker, right? And you're trying to build a house. And on the plot that the house is going to be built on, you see an anthill, right? So what are you going to do? Well, you have to build the house, right? That's your goal. Your goal is to build the house. You're not especially going to care about the anthill, right? You don't hate ants. You don't have any malevolence towards ants. You're not a sociopath necessarily, but too bad for the ants. The house needs to be built, right?
Yeah.
The human race has transformed the environment of Earth using our intelligence to achieve our goals. Why would we assume that superhuman AI would behave any differently?
Oh, I'm sure, Felix, it'll just take our stuff and be totally satisfied with our stuff.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Right. No. All right. So also in the backdrop of this visit we had to Capitol Hill, which we're going to get to very, very quickly here, was a congressional report that came out like a week or two before that was highly alarming, that basically said the solution for America to deal with AGI is to race for it first, beat China, get it first, and win the day, win the world. This was a terrifying report. Felix, talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah. So this report was the catalyst for our meetings in some sense. So the context was a few weeks ago. So there's I believe the official title is the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. And it produces these annual reports in some great depth about kind of policy advice for dealing with China. And in this report, it explicitly recommended what it's calling an AI Manhattan Project to beat China. So if it's all right with you guys, I actually would like to just read the kind of few sentences where it recommends this, because they are kind of horrifyingly explicit.
Let's go for it.
This is what the report says. Again, this is like an official commission that has a decent amount of weight in the U.S. Congress. The commission recommends Congress establish and fund a Manhattan Project-like program dedicated to racing to and acquiring an artificial general intelligence capability. AGI is generally defined as systems that are as good as or better than human capabilities across all cognitive domains and would surpass the sharpest human minds at every task. So, again, this isn't some like quack academia saying this. This is a commission that has produced a multi-hundred-page report explicitly advising the U.S. government to build smarter than human AI and beat the Chinese, right? So this is insanity.
No coordination. It's a fight. It's a race. No coordination. Let's do it first.
Yeah, this is, for lack of a better word, this is civilizational suicide, right? Mm-hmm. This is insanity. This is actors within the U.S. government explicitly recommending that we build a technology that leading experts admit could destroy the human race just because our enemies might build that technology first, right?
Yeah.
And the hell with coordination, right?
Yeah.
So I read that section of the report the day after it came out, and I realized that this was the kind of crisis moment, and there need to be kind of all hands on deck to stop the influence of this report from gaining a foothold, right? Mm. Because essentially, if the US becomes convinced that we need to build superhuman AI in order to beat China, there's no going back, probably. That becomes a race to the bottom. Even milquetoast AI policy becomes increasingly hard because, even more moderate groups are going to be accused of conspiring with the Chinese. Like, the entire policy landscape becomes much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So we just
remember, there's one thing that comes along with it. So if you think of this as cheerleaders and directors, and people are going to cough up money, but it's not as if we're literally not going to build these things anyway. OpenAI, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said AGI, artificial general intelligence, will be here in 2025. Dario Amodei of Anthropic says 2026. Lots and lots of other people have some range. Is it next year? Is it next 5 years? Is it next 10 years? If you're going to ask me, it's certainly going to be here in a year to 3 years. But let's say I'm even wrong. Even if it's here 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't change what it does.
Yeah.
I've been involved in this a long time, and I'm amazed by one thing. It is, if you talk to someone, I don't know, after Bostrom came out with his book or early on, they'd always talk about the three things you'd never do. You'd never, of course, never, ever, ever, if you're building AI, I don't know, put it on the open internet.
Yep.
Never. Yep. You'd never give it the ability to, alter its own code. Never, ever. These things are not rocket science stupid. They are manifestly stupid. And then of course, you would never work towards making an agentic, have agendas, things to achieve. We talked about putting oracles in boxes and, keeping things at extreme arm's length from the real world. But as you trivially know, these tools do the exact opposite. They readily make code. They readily make their own code. I've lost track of the number of agentic frameworks that are getting these things. And for those who are uninformed, the agent would say, aha, I have some goal. Then it would take a piece of it and then solve that. Then the goal would feed back to the original goal, and then it would alter its goal. And the point is, the heart of this thing is it want things. And we love to say want is a human sort of thing, but I mean this in the same sense a thermostat wants to keep your temperature. It doesn't have to be evil, mad AI scientists trying to kill humans. It is stamp collectors who wants to maximize its ability to collect the maximum number of stamps. The way to collect the maximum number of stamps is convert every atom on your planet to stamps. Right now, that seems ridiculous to us. We don't value that. But if you have an agent, and again, I'm going back to Bostrom's original framing, if you have an agent who values stamps literally more than anything else, it is perfectly logical to turn the planet into stamps.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have set up our trip to Washington now, gentlemen. So Felix did a phenomenal job of setting up meetings. We did 2 full days of meetings. We had 4 meetings on one day and 5 or 6 on the second day with congressional and Senate offices. Felix, just sort of walk through how you approached the whole thing. How did you decide who we were talking to? How did you approach them? How successful were you? Did you get told no by people? How did it go?
Yeah, so happy to talk a little bit more about this. And my hope, by the way, in conveying the process is that maybe somebody in your audience will be inspired to do something similar with their
1,000%. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
like something we want to say at the start of this is like what we did is not special, unique, anything. It is like literally what they want people to do. It's like what the system is set up for is for citizens to bring their issues to their lawmakers. This is how it works. So everybody can do this. Go ahead, Felix.
Yeah, so let me actually start there. The process of requesting meetings is actually fairly trivial. All that I needed to do, and dear audience member, all that you would need to do, is to go on the website of a congressperson, and they will often actually explicitly have request a meeting form on the website, and you just fill out the request a meeting form. You explain who you are, what you want to discuss, what your policy priorities are. And then a scheduler will get back to you, ideally within a week or 2, to set up a meeting. Now,
awesome.
sometimes
And one quick note, Felix, I just wanted to say to people out there, to the viewers and listeners, approach your lawmakers. If you are their constituent, you are tremendously valuable to them. If you are not their constituent, you really don't mean that much to them.
Exactly right. Thank you for clarifying, John. I was gonna sneak in that bit at the end, but it's good to have up front. And you can find your congressperson quite easily just by essentially going on the U.S. congressional website and putting in your zip code. And perhaps we could link to that in the description of the video, John, if that's cool.
Awesome. Let's do it. Yep, for sure.
But so anyway, so the process that I did was just basically requested a meeting with a barrage of congressional offices. And I chose these offices to meet with based on a few kind of relevant factors. Committee membership, familiarity with AI, maybe past legislation that they've supported related to AI. The again, kind of in the context of the AI arms race debacle that the commission put out, I chose to focus a lot on both the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, right? Because they both handle a lot of foreign policy stuff in Congress, right? So if there's anybody who needs to be convinced not to race with China, it's these guys, right?
Yeah.
Additionally, I sent out many meeting requests to offices on the House Bipartisan AI Task Force. So this was a group of congresspeople that was created, I believe, earlier this year, to kind of explicitly discuss AI and AI's risks and opportunities and come up with policy recommendations. So as you can imagine, they're somewhat more informed about AI than perhaps the average member of Congress. And so I wanted to talk with them as well. So, sent out a barrage of meeting requests. We ended up having 9 meetings over 2 days, 6 on the House side, 3 on the Senate side. And it really just, what's that, Lewis?
Bipartisan.
That's right. Yes. Very deliberately.
Yes.
Very deliberately bipartisan, because if this thing becomes a partisan issue, our chances of survival become even more remote, right? Like this needs to remain bipartisan. So that's the context of how I set them up. Now, would you like to discuss kind of the goals and focuses of the meetings as well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's go. What was our purpose? What were we trying to do?
Right. So this is, I'll kind of establish like 3 or 4 key goals that we wanted to get out of these meetings. And now with the caveat that it varied slightly depending on the office, but these are the kind of broad goals. Goal number 1, explain catastrophic and existential risk from superhuman AI, right? Goal number 2, convince these offices that a race to superhuman AI with China is a suicide race. It is not a strategic race. Goal number 3, introduce our policy solution of an international moratorium and the need for an international AI treaty to prevent the development of superhuman AI. And goal number 4 is to build relationships with these offices, establish ourselves as a group that knows what we were talking about and that offices can work with on future policies, right?
Yes.
Because realistically, you're not going to be able to cover everything you want to in the first 30-minute meeting. But if you can really set yourself up within those first 30 minutes to be a source of information that offices can come back to, that's also quite important. So those are the kind of high-level goals. As you can imagine, it's quite hard to convey everything you want to in a 30-minute time span.
For sure.
There's a need to be
strategic. And if you think about it, Felix, so we had for the folks out there, certainly keep this in mind. This was our mindset the whole time, is like, if we are listening more than we are talking, we are winning. We don't want to go in there and just here's our stuff. So we would always sort of start out the meetings with a question of sort of like, tell us where you're at on AI, or where's the congressman, where's the congresswoman, where's the senator at on AI. And I think we did that in almost every meeting. And so let's talk through what happens in that initial thing. It was pretty routine what happened in that first question. We'd say, where are they at on AI? And then they would go through the sort of like small fry stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. So, John, I loved what you actually introduced to these meetings, because what we ended up doing was, we would initially say, okay, well, what are the congressperson's priorities around AI for the next session, right? And they talk about a bill that they're co-sponsoring, or talking about kind of how they're considering AI, what their big concerns are.
Yeah. It's a lot of deep fakes and bias and all, all the stuff.
Right. Which is all great, which is all good steps in the direction towards preventing the harms of artificial intelligence. But then we asked, what are the congressperson's thoughts on AGI, right? Human level or superhuman AI. And I think in all but 1 or 2 of those meetings, the answer is the congressperson doesn't have thoughts on AGI. In other words, that there remains a information gap between what experts are telling us, which is that artificial general intelligence or superhuman AI could be here in as little as a few years, and what congresspeople are actually doing about it. Many offices simply don't know about this yet.
Right. And so to be clear, we're talking about the people on the AI task force in the United States Congress on the eve of 2025, with AGI coming down the pike, Sam Altman says, any day. And we are asking them, they go on with, here's my thoughts about deepfakes, and this is what the congressperson senator's doing. And they're sort of getting at the low-hanging fruit. And almost universally, all of them were like, AGI what?
That's right. Yeah. It was fairly surreal in some sense.
Well, so we have to step back to an important thing. So if you think about what the core message is, it's a hard message to sell. And it doesn't matter about literally Jeffrey Hinton, who just won the Nobel Prize for inventing this technology, says this is dangerous and has a high likelihood of killing humans. Literally, at that level, you can't have credentials beyond that. And yet It's the psychology of even talking about this stuff is incredibly hard. So I like to keep talking about the fact that these conversations are performative arts, and I've only done this 16 or 17 times. Felix has done it slightly more than me, maybe 30 times, and we're just getting our feet wet. Communicating these topics to these people is very, very hard. John has this really great 4-step message. Say your 4-step message, because I like it coming from you.
I mean, so we would go, everybody do intros and stuff. And then I'd be sort of like, well, I'm the non-technical person. From the high level, my view of AI risk is, I say it all the time in the YouTube shorts. And here is, that, the makers of the largest AI models tell us that it's very possible in the future their models can end all life on Earth, that they don't understand how they work, that they don't know how to control them, and that they spend all their time and money making them smarter, not safer. And so sort of level set with that. And then I think
you always use your fingers, which I liked. 1, 2,
right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And then we had it set up so we would all sort of like do our piece. And then there was some point in the conversation, we moved it around a little bit where I'd sort of like give them the like throat grab and be like, so I came here today from Baltimore because I believe that artificial intelligence is going to kill my kids. They are freshmen in college, and I don't believe they're going to graduate from college because we're all going to be dead sooner than that, in some sort of phrasing like that. And it was a moment, we are 4 humans, the 3 of us and 1 of them or 2 of them sitting in a room. It's a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever. And you are literally, they have a series of meetings and you're the one coming in saying, I think we're all going to die very soon. It's a different meeting than their other meetings. It's a different sale than any sale I've ever contemplated in life. And so like literally watching that moment, I could only see it from my eyes, like from my perspective. And I'm like thinking about it from myself. But what was that moment when you see them sort of like countenance the fact that we're talking about everybody really dying? Like that's really what this meeting's about.
It's difficult. And I will say, again, from my own direct experience, both in front of Congress and in front of regular people, it is the world's hardest sell. Never been laughed out of a room. Never been offered, quite frankly, any serious arguments. And I don't mean serious in the intellectual sense, but in people saying, no, you're wrong and you're a crazy person and stuff like that. People are, they take it in some level, but then as you say, they have 10 other meetings that day and it sort of goes forward. So let's invert this, right? Our job is ultimately to connect with 1 or more people, which I don't know, quite frankly. I'm fully assured that I don't think I've connected well enough with any of these people yet, but we're looking for champions. We're looking ultimately for people in Congress and in the Senate and in the executive branch to say, this is real. We have to bridge the gap from, this guy is making me uncomfortable to, I want to do action. And I know the secret sauce to this. It's a very simple secret sauce. We've been told this by a lot of the offices. It is repetition by people in districts.
Yes.
And here's the reason we're doing this entire episode. I don't know. We live in a world where we do advertising to millions, but I've been told by lots of people, if 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 people, but they always start with 4 or 5, tromp down to their local Congress or senatorial office and say,
right,
hey, I am concerned about this.
Which is in every town in America. There's a congressional district office. Your congressperson has a local office wherever you live with staff people that will meet with you.
So the theory is, make that call, go on the website, find out the info, say, hey, I am scared. I am worried. I want you to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
If that happens, guys like us and guys who are smarter than us and more tapped in even can have the factual conversations that say, here's what the problem is, and here's what the risk is. And, we can talk about how to frame it. But right now, the thing we're working for and need so much is top of mind. Hey, people are concerned about this. And it's very important that it has to be distinguished as artificial general intelligence, or Felix likes to say, intelligence that is as smart or smarter than us. That's a really thing to say. We're building AI that is as smart or smarter than us. Is that likely to turn out well? Just that. And Felix, you can lean into this more, because the communication of this is so important. The framing of this is so important.
Yeah, absolutely, Lewis. And I think, I'm also, at some point, I want to kind of give out a very explicit call to action. Like, these are 3 things that your viewers can do today in order to improve our likelihood of survival. But before I get there, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the messaging and what our approach was conveying these issues in congressional meetings, in
Sure.
case that's useful.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned your 4 points, John. And I think in addition to that, there are 2 or 3 things that we really hit on in every meeting. Sorry. The first was loss of control scenarios. So in other words, right, the whole premise behind our concern is that we are busy building something that might be more capable than we are without an underlying understanding of how to control it, right? The reason it's important to bring this up is that this is the kryptonite of the AI arms race narrative, right? The entire AI arms race narrative is predicated on the assumption that you can control AI reliably and use it to defeat your adversaries.
Right. Someone's going to win a prize, a world domination prize.
Right. But that's complete nonsense. What the experts are telling us is that you cannot control this technology. We don't know how yet. We might figure out if we have another decade or more of safety research. It's just not there yet. And so the bottom line, my goal is that if these offices walk away with nothing else, they walk away with the sentence in their heads ringing around: don't build something smarter than you if you don't know how to control it, right? That's the bottom line, emphasizing that.
Yeah.
Also really important to emphasize expert opinion, right? We aren't just some cranks on the fringes here talking about this. The recent winner of the Nobel Prize, Jeffrey Hinton, thinks that there might be a 50% chance that this thing causes global catastrophe. Yoshua Bengio, one of the fathers of deep learning, believes that it could cause global catastrophe. There was a survey of about 2,700 AI researchers that came out earlier this year that found, on average, a 1 in 6 estimate of human extinction from superhuman AI. 1 in 6. 2,700 researchers.
Yeah.
1 in 6 estimate, right?
Yeah.
We are not on the fringes. And
the CEOs of the main company making the thing. That's the crazy part.
So I sort of felt like this. Like, I felt a little bit like we would say to the people, like, so where are you guys at on AI? And they would be like, well, we're really into it. We're doing this, 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 and this. Right. And we would have to be like, cool. This, and this are cool. But actually, those are just, grains of sand. And we're looking at a beach here. And there is an attitude in Washington, and it's a style of process that I think has worked probably well for the government over time, which is you get some big gnarly issue and you start chipping away at it. You take like the easy stuff, the low hanging fruit. You just sort of work, and eventually you get to the big stuff. That won't work with this, as we know. The timelines just don't work. And so we tried to express that to them and just sort of talk to them about the contrast in the timelines. How do you guys feel like that went? Do you feel like they were able to really grasp the sort of like,
no,
we actually just don't have time to just nip at it?
No, it is very obvious to me that this is a multi-cut sort of thing. It's not like you go in, wave the flag, and people say, aha, I get it. There's no question that we have to have repeated bites at these offices. And by we, I certainly don't just mean the 3 people on this screen. I mean the public. I mean they have to hear that people are concerned. I am quite literally begging you to ease into this and make this a priority. And the irony, of course, is we're not talking about turning your life upside down. We're talking about relatively small amount of effort. But I can't think of any other activity has more bang for its buck. To be clear, we believe AI has a high likelihood of killing every single person on this planet. It's you, me, the dogs, the gardenias, everything. It can't not be said. It has to be repeated over and over. And I know it sounds normal in a way because I'm just saying here, and I'm not, my hair isn't on fire, but it is at that level. It is truly at that level.
No, totally. And I don't know how you guys felt. If I had one moment that I have not been able to escape from those 2 days, it's we were in a senator's office and they were talking about what they were doing about AI and basically being like, yeah, we're sort of laying back. We're waiting to see like which way the water goes. We're not really motivated on this issue. And I was like, well, what would it take the senator to be a leader on this issue? And without missing a beat, the lead science and technology staff person says to us, well, we're not really hearing from our constituents about AI. Full stop, mic drop, record scratch.
Exactly.
They only respond to what they hear about.
Yeah, this is exactly right. And so our theory of change, in a sense, requires kind of two branches, you could say, two components, right? In order to achieve anything like an AI pause, you need both of these things. You need people on the inside who are like willing and able to meet with congressional offices directly, to educate them about the risks, to hold briefings on Capitol Hill, to dress up in a suit and tie and pretend to be civilized for a day, and to actually convey the urgency directly with staffers. But that is not going to be enough, because if we go home, from our days on DC and the staffers aren't hearing anything from their constituents, it's going to go right back to the back burner. Doesn't matter how convincing our arguments are. So that is why we need you. We need you, the viewer, to take time out of your day, to contact your elected officials and to make your concerns known. Let me also add one more thing before I actually kind of explicitly discuss the 2 or 3 things that you can do. We are up against some of the wealthiest corporations on the planet. We are up against OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, right? If they wanted to, if they truly, saw us as an imminent threat, they could spend millions of dollars, hire armies of hundreds of professional lobbyists, and literally swarm Capitol Hill, meet with all of the offices they want to, and stifle any hope of regulating their product, right?
Yep.
But the only surefire way to counteract that is to have widespread public mobilization and citizen support of AI regulation. And that starts with you all, right? So let me, if it's all right with you guys, I want to use this as a call to action. There are 2 or 3 things that you, the viewer, can do today to actually reduce the probability of human extinction.
Go for it.
Call your congressperson and your senators, right? So you have a House representatives, you have 2 U.S. senators, right? Call all 3 of their offices, and also,
and they literally track the calls. They like the person writing the thing down will be like, Susie from 21230 called about AI risk. Note.
Yes. Exactly. So actually, I'll just use this as another segue before I get into the call to action. Even if you're highly cynical about government, which I completely not only understand, but in many cases share that perspective, it still is evidence-based that calling and emailing Congress has an impact. And even if you believe that congressional officials are only acting out of kind of pure self-serving reasons, you would still come to the conclusion that calling Congress matters because you are a voter and Congress people want to get reelected. And because they want to get reelected, they want to avoid taking unpopular positions. And if they learn that accelerating AI development is an unpopular position amongst their constituents, which indeed it is, they will be less likely to do so. So even if you're
real quick, Felix, like behind every congressperson and senator that, maybe some villain from the news or someone that's on the take or whatever, all the horrible things that, people hear about politicians, there are staffers, dozens of staffers who are people that are generally underpaid compared to their education, who are doing this on both sides because they actually care and actually want to see change. And so I would say universally, every single person we met with took us seriously, took the issue seriously, asked good questions, took good notes. Like I was encouraged by the second line of Congress and Senate, the staff level, at their response just to the conversation. So it's like people should not be put off. I think it's a really good point. If you're super turned off about politics and government and, just the way the world is, this is like the second and third level where there's actually just real humans who are coming to work every day trying to change the world for the better, just like we are.
Exactly right, John. So in other words, even if you're highly cynical about how our government operates, and even if you despise your congressperson or believe that they're corrupt or bought out or whatever the case may be, and I know I'm speaking to a significant percentage of the US population when I say that, even in those cases, there is still substantial evidence that calling and writing your congressperson can make an impact because it allows them to keep a pulse on what their constituents care about and therefore modulate their stances in order to improve their chances of re-election.
Really important dimension to this. We often think of ourselves as non-exceptional in some sort of sense. We live on a planet with 8 billion people. This problem certainly affects 8 billion people. But it turns out that Americans are at the forefront of this. The companies that are putting us at risk are overwhelmingly in California. There's a couple of thousand people working at these companies that are in California. They are governed by laws that are in the United States. So it turns as Americans, and I'm not by no means discouraging people in other countries to not weigh in on this, but as Americans, we can punch well above our weight.
Yeah.
And
it's like there's this idea that these guys are the future bringers. No, they're just product makers. They're just dudes making a product. This is not like the future from on high coming to us.
Yep. So one of the ways that I got sort of engaged in this, and again, I give all kudos to Pause AI because I bellyached about this for years, and I talked to people in sort of an on-focused sort of way for years. I literally attended some of the first events around this in the early 2000s. Eliezer Yudkowsky sort of kicked this off, certainly, particularly for John in 2003. Don't remember the month. I met him in 2009. And that wasn't the beginning of this. This has been going on for a while, but it's social. You have to believe that you should be engaged in part of this. I have a favorite line John has taken to signing off his podcast with it, which I think is the absolute truest thing, said by Margaret Mead. Say, never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I know we feel small. I know we feel like they have this impossible sort of thing to achieve. And to be quite honest, I'm not assured that we can achieve it. But I am committed to working hard to try to do this, right? I like being human, and it would be an incredible, horrible thing to have literally 8 billion people be killed. And I know there are some weird people on the world who are literally looking forward to this. As strange as that might sound, they want to be supplanted by a successor's species. But even if that's true, even if that's the goal, I want to work towards making the human experience last as long as possible and achieve as long as possible. And you have power. You have power.
So there was a moment in the meetings, in every meeting, where we'd get to where it'd be like, okay, we're really worried, we're all gonna die, everything's really bad. And then we'd be like, but good news, it turns out you guys are in position to help save us. And there are actually things we can do legislatively to not all die. And they would be like, ooh, what are the things? Like they would all, that was a setup where I feel like they all universally were like, okay, you just like gave me an up to my neck in salt. What is the sugar? and we would be like, okay, so there are two things. But the two, I'm not talking that obviously pause, the sort of overall solution of pause, but it was the hard compute cap and the verification on the hardware of the chips.
Yep.
Were the two things that we sort of pointed to. And I thought they both really hit. I thought they both like resonated. They're pretty easy to explain, pretty easy to understand. I don't know, Felix, you want to take a run at sort of like how we would just sort of characterize that to the staffer we were talking to?
Yes, although you're missing one. There are actually three things, and the third is an AI safety agency to scale up safe AI research in proportion to slowing down unsafe AI research.
Okay.
So yeah, let me kind of briefly describe to you what we described to the congressional offices,
Please.
which is a 30,000-foot view of how to save the world, essentially. First bit is compute cap, right? And so this is basically just a threshold on the size of the largest AI training runs, past which you are not allowed to exceed unless you can make sure that your model is verifiably safe. So right now, there's no such threshold. AI companies can train arbitrarily large models up to, however much they can afford, essentially, without actually being required to verify that the models above the danger threshold are safe. So the first bit is just, let's set a threshold. Let's not allow let's not allow companies to train models above that threshold unless we've actually solved the underlying problems of AI safety. That's point one.
Yeah. Yep.
Point two, verification mechanisms, right? Making sure that bad guys, so to speak, don't just ignore the rules anyway. The good news is that it's actually very feasible to prevent training of the largest AI models, because the training of the largest AI models is exceptionally costly and exceptionally difficult. It requires extremely specialized AI chips. It requires, half of a small country's worth of electricity, right? And what that means is that it is eminently feasible to detect unauthorized training runs, both on the AI chips themselves. You can have on-chip verification mechanisms that detect whether a chip is being used as part of an illegal training run. You can also track the supply of these specialized AI chips to make sure that there isn't a unaccounted for chip cluster somewhere. You can track the literal electricity output of a training run quite easily, because again, it takes just ridiculous amounts of power to run. Very hard to do that without anyone noticing, right? So congressional offices seem very interested in that because it is a feasible, practical, legally sound solution to this problem. And then, as I was saying, the third bit is an international AI safety agency, right? We need to bring together the world's greatest AI researchers, scale up drastically our funding into safe AI research. So right now, the amount of funding being spent on improving AI capabilities exceeds the amount of funding spent on AI safety by about 2 orders of magnitude, right? 100-to-1 ratio, which is insane and criminal, right?
Yeah.
So we need to scale up investment into AI safety research, and we need to set kind of standards for safe AI, such as, robust monitoring and enforcement, mandatory evaluations, and so on and so forth, such that we actually have a roadmap forward. And so then, to wrap up here, the glue that holds these three pillars together is the necessity of international collaboration. If the US does this on its own, great step in the right direction, not going to be enough to keep the world safe. We need an international AI treaty that is binding on all member nations, where the signatories agree not to train models above a danger threshold, to verify that these models are not being trained, and to drastically scale up investment into safe AI research. Again, going back on the China section, right? This is the way to prevent an AI arms race with China, is to work with countries like China to hash out the basic terms to keep our world safe from Armageddon. It can be done. It's been done before, by the way, with nuclear arms limitation treaties. It can be done again. The common incentive to save the world is greater than any national incentive that the US or China might have. It is in the self-interest of both nations to work together towards an AI treaty. We believe it can be done.
Yeah. And if I can offer something to this three-part plan, three and a half part plan, uh, in a technical sense, the notion of monitoring turns out to be pretty damn simple, right? We're used to the nuclear regime where Iran is hiding a bomb underneath some mountain and no one can see it, sort of stuff. That is not the condition in this current world. Basically, we have relatively few companies, TSMC being most notably in Taiwan, is building the chips that are doing this. It's a tiny number of companies building the chips. There's a tiny number of data centers where they're being deployed. There's a tiny number of organizations doing the things. Then they're in the U.S., so they're susceptible to U.S. legal changes and edicts even. And then finally, because we live in a world where don't have to do things in closed software sort of senses, we could have a relatively simple law that says you have to add on-chip monitoring that reports your usage. And then we could publish that data in an open source sort of way. So you could have citizen scientists and other advocates not just saying, hey, government, please take care of this for me, but also have their individual view on the world. And so it becomes a virtuous cycle. And by the way, companies will always bellyache. You want to change the color of a thing, they're going to say that's too onerous. But this turns out to be, it's cheap. It is relatively easy to implement. It's certainly easier than some of the projects I've worked on. I've worked on some of the largest software projects on the planet. It turns out there's significant amount of effort, but it's not freaky amount of effort. And it's been proposed in other bills and in other ways. It's not like it's a new idea either.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we had these 2 days of meetings. I think there were some ups and downs, a little bit of hits and misses here and there, but I feel like overall, the vibe I took out of it was that that was absolutely worth it. This is something that should be repeated often by as many people as possible. It was amazing how each member and each senator was sort of waiting for social cues from their peers. So we had many staffers ask us, how are other people feeling about it? Do you have other members, prominent members who are strong supporters? How does the committee chair feel about it? So, in a building filled with leaders, there was a whole lot of following going on, but, I think we just need to accept that as the lay of the land and, use it to our advantage, right? If we had 3 big names to be like, hey, these are the ones that are with me, and they'd all be like, oh shit, we got to do what they do. Like that's what we're missing. So I was really encouraged. So let's talk about where we go from here. We're gonna go back, do some more of these days. There's gonna be a presentation coming to talk about that a little bit, guys.
So our basic goal from here on out is to continue the fight, right? We're going to meet with as many offices as possible. We don't yet know which offices will be most valuable to meet with because the new Congress is coming in and we will meet with them based on committee assignments. So, the most relevant committees include, as I was saying, the House and Senate committees that handle foreign policy, the AI task force, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee on the House side. There are a few others, right? So, we're going to kind of keep our eyes peeled for who's going to be in which committees and meet with them accordingly. So that's on the kind of individual meeting side of things, which we've been doing already. What's a little bit going to be more exciting is we are going to be holding briefings on the existential risk of AI, the Pause AI proposal, and the feasibility of international coordination, explicitly, amongst other things, tackling and I would hope ripping to shreds the China arms race narrative, right? And so these briefings, we're hoping to get dozens of congressional staff in a room and talk with them about this in depth. And hopefully that will be enough to swing the pendulum back away from the arms race nonsense as much as possible. And those will be starting probably, mid-February. So
Great.
very,
And I think everybody we talked to about that was super receptive. Like
yeah.
as a sort of like, what's the next step? We'd be like, oh, we're going to have this briefing. And they'd be like, oh, awesome. Be sure you tell me when that is. And, I'll be there.
Yep, exactly. And so, we are just getting started. I only moved to Washington D.C. a few months ago. About half of that time, Congress has been in recess, and there was also an election that happened recently. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about that one. So there's been, there's been a lot that's happened over the last few months, but we are only getting started. 2025 is and has to be our year, right? We are going to scale up the Pause AI movement, hopefully by at least an order of magnitude, activate way more local groups in different cities, have way more grassroots lobbying, way more in-person lobbying in DC, and for lack of a better phrase, become too big to ignore, right?
I
This is
love
what
it.
we need to do. We don't have the luxury of time. Let's do it now.
I love it. I've been saying for many months, this is the largest mass movement in human history. But we got to get it going here. Time is moving. So
Let's put the gas on this. Yeah.
yeah.
To be more focused too, if I could ask for any one thing, we need more people to help on this very, very specific thing. Reach out to us. Do it on your own. It turns out the phrase, I am afraid of AI that is smarter than us. Nothing else. No technical explanations, no plan, anything. It is that message which has to get to these offices. And the sincerity counts. No amount of paid lobbying is going to approach some constituent who says, I don't want my kids to be killed, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of it too. And this part is hard. Sean is a genius at this, and because he is able to just get the sentence out. It is hard saying these things are bad. It's hard saying people can be killed. It feels quite frankly a little nut job.
Sucks. Yeah.
It sucks. But it's true. It is literally the message from people like Jeffrey Hinton, Nobel Prize winner for this very thing. It is literally the message of our organization. It is literally the message of the Center for AI Safety letter where people, and I don't know how many people signed, but it was saying that AI should be at the same risk as nuclear and biological threats. I'm slightly misquoting. It is something that has to go above that hyper believability stage. And the place that it happens, the person who does it is you, right? There needs to be more people saying that. So I used to be quite honest, be a little cringy at the notion of John would say, I'm worried about my kids being murdered, killed. He started with killed. He said now several times murdered. And that's the right sentence. It's true. It's real. It's honest. And more of people chorusing that idea will help us. And of course, not stupidly and just because you want to parrot us. We believe it's real. Visit the pauseai.org website to learn more.
So guys, we're going to do this again soon. We're going to get the band back together, head down to DC and do it again.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And if we're starting to wrap up here, let me just kind of close my piece.
Yeah, please bring it on.
Reiterating that we need you guys. We need the viewers to help us with this.
Oh.
If you are in the US, call and email your House representative and both of your senators. Be explicit. Tell them what your worries are related to AI. Tell them that you want a global AI pause, not a race with China. Bring this up with them. If you're feeling bold and ambitious, request a in-person meeting with them in congressional in your local district. You don't need to fly to DC. They have a district office right where you live. Do that. If you're a congressional staffer who's watching this, bring this up with your boss. Tell them that people are concerned about this, right? And last but not least, if you are interested in getting involved with the Pause AI movement, reach out to me. I'm the organizing director. We want more interested volunteers. We want more local groups. Send me an email. You can reach me at felix@pauseai-us.org. Let's do this.
Love it.
Excellent.
Beautiful. That was awesome.
Can I give one more plug for my book?
Go for it, Louis. Yes, plug the book.
There it goes. The name of the book is Catastrophe, subtitled The Unstoppable Threat of AI. It's out in January. You can find it on Amazon, and you can find it at xriskbooks.com. And
beautiful.
We've all written for it. I hope you will read it too. And I should also say that there's a free version. You don't even need to purchase it if you'd like. The most important thing is to read it, and you can get that on xriskbooks.com.
And best idea, order 100 of them and put them in every neighbor's mail slot.
There you go.
2025 has got to be the year. I have to tell you, it was a stunning, clarifying moment when I asked that U.S. Senator staffer what it would take for the senator to be a leader on AI risk, and she said, without missing a beat, we're not hearing anything from our constituents on AI. Take that to heart, all of you. Let's change that. We, the people, that's us, can change that. Today, right now, write to an elected leader of yours, and then do it again tomorrow to someone else. Follow up, set meetings, have the meetings. Let our leaders know this matters to you or we are toast. It's pretty much that simple. Okay, so as you know, these are strange times, and we don't know how long we have to live. So we live every day like it could be our last, and we end every show with something we call a celebration of life, just something that makes us thrilled to be alive. Today, our celebration is a little bit different, comes from our friend Louis Berman. Our celebration is simply cute kittens.
Rabbit kicks. Rabbit kicks. Rabbit kicks.
I am more of a dog person myself, but did grow up with dogs and cats, and so I can certainly appreciate cute kittens. Kittens are very cute. That is a wonderful thing about life, cute kittens. Okay, so if you've made it this far, you are a real member of the For Humanity family. I have an ask for you. Once again, in the show notes, you will see monthly donation subscription links. Even if it's just $1, it would mean a whole lot to me if you would sign up and let me know that you are supporting For Humanity. Okay, friends, please remember, AI risk is not someone else's problem. It's yours and it's mine. And in 2025, we're going to help every human on Earth understand the fact that AI risk is their biggest problem too. This is the year humanity wakes up to AI risk. We will not allow 2,000 people to wipe 8 billion people and all living things off the face of the earth. No fucking way. For Humanity, I'm John Sherman. I will see you tomorrow.